May your day be filled with profound peace and clarity. I really want to offer a warm divine blessing over you today, and honestly, for your entire upcoming week.
Absolutely. Yeah, we could all use that kind of anchoring right now.
Right. And you might actually need that peace to anchor you today because, well, we are heading straight into a massive ancient acoustic valley.
Oh, it is a wild scene.
It really is. Picture 500,000 people ordered to stand on a mountainside and just shout curses down upon their own heads.
It's intense.
So intense. Anyway, welcome to this deep dive. Today we are taking you on a journey back to reconstruct one of the most dramatic, historical, and spiritual staging events in human history.
Yeah, we're pulling our insights today specifically from Deuteronomy chapter 27.
Exactly. And we're leaning really heavily on the detailed historical and theological context found in two great sources, the Holman and the NAA Study Bibles.
Right, because our mission today is to essentially unpack this massive ancient covenant renewal ceremony.
We want to understand what it actually reveals about community, about justice, and, crucially, how a civilization that had zero modern forensics handled the kinds of vicious crimes that only happen in the shadows.
And that angle, the whole shadow crimes aspect, that's what makes this specific text so revolutionary, I think.
How so?
Well, I mean, when modern people think about ancient legal codes, we tend to picture these very, primitive surface-level rules, like eye for an eye.
Right, it's very blunt force justice.
Exactly. But the historical reality laid out in this chapter reveals a highly sophisticated approach to human psychology and behavior.
Yeah, the text essentially establishes the architectural and moral blueprint for an entirely new society.
It really does.
And building a new society requires an actual physical staging ground. You can't just declare a nation-defining constitution out of thin air, right? You have to anchor it in physical space.
Yeah, you need a monument.
Right. So before a single word is shouted across this valley we mentioned, Moses and the elders issue a very specific set of construction orders to the Israelites.
Right. They tell them that on the very day they finally cross the Jordan River, they have to set up these incredibly large stones on Mount Ebal.
But they aren't just, stacking a pile of rocks.
No, not at all.
The text commands them to coat these stones entirely in plaster. And once that plaster is set, they are to write the words of the law on them clearly and distinctly.
Think about the underlying mechanism of that plaster for a second. The NAA study notes highlight that coating these stones in lime plaster provided a really smooth, pristine canvas for the writing.
Oh, sure, it makes it legible.
But let's look at the environmental context, too. I mean, we're talking about the ancient Near East.
Right, super bright desert environment.
Exactly. You take massive, rough-hewn boulders and slather them in stark, bright white lime plaster. In an arid, sun-drenched landscape, you suddenly have this gleaming monument reflecting the desert sun.
Wow.
It totally dominates the visual field.
It's essentially an ancient highway billboard, then.
That's a perfect way to describe it.
You've got these massive structures just smoothed out and blindingly white, with the laws written across them in bold, unmistakable lettering.
Yeah.
It totally removes any plausible deniability. It's a way of making the baseline rules of the community so glaringly visible that absolutely no one could walk past and claim ignorance.
You literally can't say, oh, I didn't know the law.
Exactly. It's towering over you in bright white stone.
It creates a permanent, undeniable public record. But, and this is where it gets fascinating, right next to this glaring billboard of law, Moses issues a second command that seems almost contradictory.
Okay, what is it?
They are told to build an altar to the Lord on Mount Ebal. But the specific instruction is that this altar must be built using completely uncut, unhewn stones.
Wait, absolutely no tools?
No iron tools are allowed to touch or shape them at all.
Okay, I have to stop you there because the altar instructions seem completely backward to me.
Really? How so?
Well, if a society is building a monument to the divine, human nature dictates using the finest tools available, right?
Sure, you'd think so.
You'd want your absolute best stonemasons chiseling the blocks so they look perfectly symmetrical, beautiful, architectural. Why mandate a pile of rough, jagged rocks?
To understand that, we actually have to look at the theology governing ancient Israelite worship.
Okay.
The study notes trace this specific command back to Exodus 20.25. The core concept there is that human tools actually profane the sacred stones.
Profane them, like ruin them.
Yeah, exactly. If a stonemason chips away at a rock to make it perfectly square, human intervention has altered its natural, God-given state. Leaving the stones uncut symbolizes absolute purity.
I see.
It ensures that the altar is recognized purely as a provision of God's creation rather than, becoming a monument to human craftsmanship or technological prowess.
That makes a lot of sense. The iron tool represents human ego and industry.
Right, and the uncut stone represents divine sufficiency.
It just strips away the builder's pride entirely. The focus is forced upward, not inward toward their own skills.
Exactly. And what gives this text incredible weight is that it isn't just some theoretical concept.
What do you mean?
Well, the NAA study notes point out a pretty spectacular archaeological discovery. Excavations on Mount Ebal actually uncovered an ancient place of worship dating right back to the early Israelite settlement period.
Wait, they actually found it?
They did. Archaeologists unearthed a massive altar there. It measured 9.1 by 7 meters.
Oh my goodness, that's huge.
It's massive, and it was constructed entirely of rough, unhewn stones, exactly as described in the ancient text. Plus, it was accessed by a smooth stone ramp rather than steps.
I mean, an altar that is 9.1 by 7 meters is monumental. We are talking about a structure the size of a small house, built entirely out of unworked boulders.
Yeah, it's not something you just casually stumble upon.
That is clearly designed for a massive communal sensory experience.
Oh, and the sensory experience was the entire point. Because on this massive uncut altar, the Israelites were commanded to offer two very specific types of sacrifices.
Okay, lay them out for me.
First, the burnt offerings. The Holman notes clarified that these were mandatory sacrifices specifically meant for expiation.
So dealing directly with sin and brokenness.
Exactly. And with these, the entire animal was consumed by fire, sending this thick, heavy smoke up from the mountain. It was a visceral, visual representation of clearing the path for communion with God.
Right. It's acknowledging the absolute severity of the wrongdoing before anything else can happen.
Yes. But immediately following the heavy, solemn smoke of those burnt offerings, they were commanded to offer peace offerings.
Which are different, right?
Completely different. The peace offerings functioned in almost the opposite way. Only a portion was burned, the rest of it was roasted.
Like a barbecue.
Basically, the study notes emphasize that these peace offerings were essentially a massive, joyful, communal meal.
Yeah.
The meat was meant to be eaten by the people right there in a spirit of celebration.
Wow. So you move instantly from the solemnity of dealing with sin to a massive, fragrant barbecue in the presence of the divine.
Yeah, the emotional whiplash must have been something else.
The duality of that is just incredible. So the stage is completely set. You have the blinding white plastered stones broadcasting the law, the sheer mass of the uncut altar, the heavy smoke of the burnt offerings, and the smell of roasting meat from the peace offerings.
It's an overwhelming physical environment for sure.
But now we move to the human element because the logistics here sound completely unhinged.
They really do.
I mean, the entire nation of Israel, all 12 tribes, are ordered to physically divide and position themselves onto two separate mountains.
Right. So half the nation moves up onto Mount Gerizim. That group includes Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Joseph, and Benjamin.
Oh, okay.
And they are standing there specifically to represent the blessings of the covenant.
And then directly across the valley from them, on Mount Ebal, which is the same mountain with the altar and the billboard, you have the other half.
Right.
Reuben, Gad, Asher, Zebulun, Dan, and Naphtali. And they are positioned to represent the curses.
Yes.
And down in the valley basin, sandwiched between these two towering mountains of people, stand the Levite priests, whose job is to literally shout the declarations of the law.
And this is the moment Moses declares, as the notes emphasize. He says, "This day you have become the people of the Lord."
Which is a bold statement, considering they'd been around for a while.
Right. Context is crucial here. They had been wandering the desert for 40 years, already identifying as God's people. This wasn't their initial formation as a group.
So what was it?
The Holman notes explain this was a profound, formal renewal of their covenant relationship, right as they transition into a completely new geographical and historical era.
Okay, but I have to ask, putting 500,000 people on one mountain, another 500,000 on an opposing mountain, and having priests screaming from the valley floor, it sounds like a logistical nightmare.
Oh, it sounds impossible.
Was this just, ancient theatrics, like an intimidation tactic, or did this specific geographical split actually serve a functional purpose?
Oh, it was a functional masterpiece.
Really?
Yeah. They are commanded to travel to Shechem or Shechem. Geographically, Shechem sits in a valley perfectly nestled between Mount Gerizim and Mount Ebal.
Okay.
The topography of this specific valley consists of these hard limestone rock faces that essentially form a natural acoustic amphitheater.
Oh, wow. So they didn't just pick two tall hills randomly.
Not at all.
They utilize the Earth's own acoustic engineering.
The physics of the space are remarkable. I mean, think about a pre-industrial world with zero mechanical noise pollution.
No cars, no planes.
Exactly. Sound waves would bounce off the hard, rocky slopes without getting absorbed by soft vegetation or competing with ambient city noise. The shape of the valley acted as a giant parabolic reflector.
That is wild.
So the voices of the Levites standing in the center could literally carry an echo all the way up the slopes to the massive crowds. They used the geography to amplify the law.
That's brilliant.
But there is a second, deeply historical layer to this specific location, too.
Wait, the NWA notes bring up Abraham here, right?
Exactly. This exact region, Shechem, is the geographical location where God first appeared to Abraham generations earlier and originally promised him the land.
Oh, wow.
So Israel standing in this acoustic valley isn't just about sound dynamics. It is a profound, full-circle historical moment.
Right. The promise made to their wandering ancestor is now echoing in the ears of a massive nation standing on the very precipice of inheriting that exact land.
It gives you chills.
It really does. The physical staging is just perfectly executed. The acoustics of the Limestone Valley are primed. The people are locked into their positions. And now the actual ceremony begins.
Yeah, here comes the heavy part.
The Levites in the valley read a list of 12 highly specific curses. And after every single declaration, the entire assembly on the mountain is required to shout, Amen.
And we should clarify, the study notes are very clear on the definition of amen in this context.
It's not just a polite agreement at the end of a prayer.
No, not at all. It is not a casual expression of agreement. It literally translates to, let it be so.
Let it be so.
Right. By shouting amen, hundreds of thousands of people are collectively and solemnly subjecting themselves to the physical and spiritual consequences of these specific laws. They are actively accepting divine justice.
Let's look at the actual content of what they are accepting, because the list of curses is really striking.
It is.
The Levites shout curses against anyone making an idol in secret. They curse anyone who dishonors their parents or who moves a neighbor's boundary stone. They curse anyone who leads a blind person astray on the road. The text specifically highlights perverting justice for the most vulnerable, the foreigner, the orphan, and the widow.
Right.
They list several severe forms of sexual immorality, including incest and bestiality. They pronounce curses on anyone who strikes a neighbor in secret, anyone who accepts a bribe to murder an innocent person, and finally, there is a sweeping curse for failing to uphold all the words of the law.
The specificity of that list really reveals the core anxieties and the moral baseline of the society they're trying to build.
But what stands out to me is the complete absence of obvious public crimes.
Yes.
Like, there is no curse shouted from the valley for robbing a marketplace at high noon or, getting into a massive public brawl.
Right, those aren't there.
Almost every single curse on this list involves a crime that relies on the shadows. Take moving a boundary stone, for example.
That's a great example.
In a modern context, that sounds like a minor property dispute. But in an ancient agrarian economy, land is literal survival.
Absolutely.
If you sneak out into the dark and nudge a heavy stone marker over just 3 inches every night over the course of a year, you have quietly stolen a massive chunk of your neighbor's livelihood.
You're slowly starving their family.
Exactly. And you are doing it in a way that is incredibly hard to prove.
The theme of hidden sins is absolutely central to both the Holman and NAA study notes.
It makes sense.
Because human judicial systems, whether we're talking about ancient Israel or modern society today, they are inherently limited by evidence.
Right. A human judge can only prosecute what can be seen, measured, and witnessed.
Evidence-based justice fundamentally fails in the dark. If a person quietly resents and abuses their parents behind closed doors, or takes a bribe in a back room to let a murderer go free, the human court is largely powerless.
If there are no witnesses, there's no crime in the eyes of the state.
Which is exactly why this ceremony at Mount Ebal is so critical. The text explicitly elevates these hidden crimes out of the realm of human courts and places them entirely under divine jurisdiction.
Wow.
By standing on those mountains and shouting amen, the community is legally and spiritually acknowledging that God sees the shadows.
The human magistrate might not catch you moving the boundary stone or carving a secret idol in your basement, but the divine judge does.
It effectively removes the whole concept of getting away with it.
The shadows offer no actual cover.
None. And look at who this divine jurisdiction protects, specifically.
Yeah, the list of victims is very pointed.
It's the blind person wandering on the road, the foreigner with no local family ties, The orphan and the widow who have no financial or legal advocates in a highly patriarchal society.
Right, the most vulnerable.
The Holman notes bring out a profound social justice element here. Human nature, especially in ancient power structures, tends to exploit the weak when no one is looking.
Of course. Because an orphan or a foreigner has no voice in a human court, they are easy targets for exploitation.
They are the people you can hurt without facing any earthly consequences.
Exactly.
But this legal code acts as a massive equalizer. It declares that protecting the most vulnerable reflects the very nature of God.
That's a powerful statement to make to a new nation.
It sends a chilling warning to the powerful, really.
Yeah.
It says, even if human society ignores the cries of the widow or the blind, God does not. If you harm them in secret, you bypass the local judge and answer directly to the highest court in the universe.
Which weaves a moral fabric that polices the private, unseen lives of the citizens. It demands integrity even when they are completely alone.
Right.
The sheer weight of that realization, that every secret strike, every hidden bribe, every quiet exploitation of the vulnerable is entirely visible to a divine judge, it completely shifts how a society functions.
It has to.
Which leads us to the final encompassing curse shouted from the valley.
Right, the big one.
The 12th and final curse falls on anyone who does not uphold all the words of this law. It doesn't leave any room for partial credit.
The NWA notes point out that this final declaration serves as a summary of the entire law code. It argues that the covenant demands an absolute level of perfection and obedience that leaves absolutely no loopholes for the human heart.
It's a terrifying standard.
Wow.
And honestly, we want to leave you, our listener, pondering one final thought today that builds on everything we've just uncovered.
Yeah, this is something to really sit with.
In the original Hebrew text of Deuteronomy, there is a very specific word used regarding how the people are supposed to treat this law. The word is shamar.
Shamar.
Right. Shamar doesn't just mean to casually remember or, vaguely observe. It means to carefully guard, to aggressively protect, or to watch over something like a highly alert sentinel standing guard in the dead of night.
Wow. A sentinel.
Yeah, it requires a relentless protective vigilance over your own actions. So if the massive plastered stones make ignorance impossible,
Right.
and the acoustic valley ceremony puts every single hidden, shadowy crime under the piercing light of divine jurisdiction,
Yeah.
and on top of all that, Shamar requires you to be a perfect, unfailing sentinel over all of these rules.
Mm-hmm.
How does any human being realistically survive a covenant that demands absolute perfection?
It's an almost impossible weight.
If the shadows aren't safe and the standard is flawless vigilance, it leaves humanity facing the terrifying limits of our own righteousness.
It creates an inescapable tension, doesn't it? It forces the individual to realize that they simply cannot rely on their own ability to perfectly guard their hidden life,
No, they can't.
which ultimately points to a desperate need for a grace that is greater than our deepest, most secret flaws.
A heavy, deeply profound tension to carry with us. Thank you so much for exploring the stones, the shadows, and the history with us on this deep dive today. And as we close, we want you to know that God blesses all of you, our listeners. May you walk in peace and truth until we meet again.